All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to Let's Get Ready to CISO. And we're going to talk about today how to win in your first 90 days as a CISO. What is it you need to do? How does it work? And what are some of the things that you can expect as you come in? So, we've got a ton of tough stuff to talk about. Um, Feel free, ask questions as we go along. Uh, I love talking about some of this stuff because I love helping organizations figure out and what they need to do, how to push the envelope, how to move the needle, how to get to where they need to be, and focus on business objectives. So, a little bit of background on me. I responded to my first cyber incident just over 20 years ago. So it was I had hustled my way into a job in tech. Uh, just went around talking with people, telling people that they should hire me, and eventually one of them did. So here I was helping to administer this network, everything from like pulling cables to a little bit of AD and writing my first batch scripts. So it's definitely showing my age there. And I got a call, and I just was like, "Wait, what happened? Okay, I'll be right there." And the funny thing is, while we didn't really talk as much about root cause in the industry back then, many of those same questions that I asked 20 years ago are the same questions that I literally asked last week, 2 weeks ago on different incident response. Um, so it's the mentality, the thinking, the way that we approach problems hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed in all that time. The context in which we did. Oh, sure, we went from on-prem into Azure. That's fine, right? Great. We did that. But the fact of the matter is, when we're addressing, especially in incident response, if we're looking at an outage, if we're looking at a DDoS, if we're looking at one of those things, getting back to healthy, getting back to good, getting back to business operations is obviously the goal. So then why in those instances do we run across people that say, "Hey, I can fix this?" You go, "Well, does that actually get us back to revenue?" Those questions have not changed in 20 years, right? So after that, I went into my first sales engineering role, and that will come up, by the way. Sales engineering will come up. It's an important thing to know, both of those words, obviously. And we'll talk about both of those. But sales engineering and then West Point, where I did electrical engineering. After West Point, I like hard problems. So Ranger School, infantry, Afghanistan deployment. And then found out after I took my second platoon, found out I'd broken my back. So I went up to core staff, got to write a bunch of exercises and got reconstructive back surgery. Yay! That's the best thing. No. And I thought maybe if I legit have a weak spine, like we've joked about that in training, right? Oh, look, they got a weak spine. No, if I legit have a weak spine, maybe I shouldn't be in the infantry anymore. And so that was when I switched over to cyber, and then I got to do a bunch of really cool stuff in cyber branch. After 3 years or so, ended up getting medically retired. So that identity shift, going from infantry to cyber, especially at that time, defensive cyber, was a big shift. Having transitioned that identity once made it much easier to shift the identity again when I transitioned out of cyber in uniform to not being in uniform. That was a tough transition. And we talked about it as a community a lot, but you should know that writing your own identity and knowing yourself, like John and Jeff just talked about that, 5 minutes ago in another talk. Knowing what that looks like and what you stand for and why you're important to yourself is hugely important, right? And when you can build that in, you can remember who you are. Aligning what you do with who you are is where magic happens. So that kind of takes us to our next point is that eventually, maybe not initially, but eventually you belong here. You understand security in a way that the vast majority of people do not understand security. I'm going to say that again. You understand security in a way that the vast majority of people just simply do not understand security, right? What's the threat doing? Who is our threat? What is that and how do we apply it? How do we chain that together? How do we get to yes? We'll talk about some more of this stuff. So stay tuned. We're definitely going to talk a lot more about it, of how it relates, because it drives directly back into how you win during your first 90 days as a CISO. So while you do belong here, just remember that past success, the things that made you awesome, the things that you got you top tier report cards, right? Your different evaluations. Those things aren't necessarily going to get you success now. They're going to help it and they're going to get you get you there, but they're not going to directly immediately transition over. So specifically, I'm talking about most of you are coming out of the engineering space, right? Transition out. We go to cyber boot camp. We become a cyber engineer. We go through. We're really good at building out Splunk. We can integrate with Fortinet. We can shape this JSON back and forth and do a data transform and get it into our system and then understand behavioral analytics. And we can identify alerts based off of that to know if we are pwned. And then if we are pwned, we can get back to healthy. That's great. That won't necessarily make you win in this position because this position is about something a little bit different. In fact, I often say that the C in cyber stands for change. Yes, we live in a changing landscape. But remember, the questions that I asked 20 years ago are the same questions that I ask now. And if that's the case, what really is changing? So it's a trick question. What is changing is not necessarily the landscape. Of course it is. That's fine. What's changing is the organization, and you are the one that is responsible for driving that change into the organization. You. You have to drive it. And when I told that to my friend Nikki Streethar, she immediately looked at me and goes, "Yeah, and the Y in cyber stands for why." I think that's accurate. I I would bet that if we did a LinkedIn poll right now, which I'll save you all for that, but I think if we did, most of you would agree and respond that that's probably pretty accurate. So your role is to drive change. And how do you drive change? You drive change through influence. You drive change through influence. Okay, what does that mean? If we're going to drive change, and how do we drive change through instant? Okay, so wait, hold on a second. I can drive technical change. That's easy, right? Hey, we're in Azure AD. We implemented Intune. We've got Security Center, and we reduce that risk. Great. But your job is to influence. Yeah, Dale Carnegie, right? How to win friends and influence people. Boom. Thank you, Dallas. Um, as you work through that, that is your job in the organization. And we'll talk about the downsides of that here shortly. But if really that is the job in the organization, and it often is as roles change, that means you have to understand sales. You don't necessarily have to understand sales to go out and bring new clients into the company, but you have to understand sales from the perspective that your job is to save the organization from itself. And to do that, you have to sell the internal organizational uh, drive to understand that what you're bringing is going to do a thing. And we can talk more about that. We can talk about that all day long. I'll talk about revenue in a little bit. But that's really where our differentiator is. Because if you go to another engineer, you say, "Hey, Sally, I really think that we like this SaaS platform that we have over here. We can actually get a JSON out of that. We can get that data. We can throw it into our SIM, and I think we can do so. Oh, too easy. Let me spin up a VM, pull data, ingest, look at it. Easy. But when you're looking at trying to drive into new markets, how does security help you drive into a new market? And that's where this is all for context. That's where we start looking at what a CISO is and does. Cool. So, as part of your conversation, where then does your responsibility lie for a breach versus accountability? And how do those play? If you are purely responsible if a breach happens, but you're not accountable to actually run the systems to reduce the risk, then what are you really doing? You are only there to make sure that somebody else gets to stay at the company when a breach happens because you're gonna go. You're the fall guy. Sorry, not sorry. And I've turned down a number of jobs because of reporting structure and everything else. And it turns out that if I don't have the accountability for the systems, then I don't have the authority to change them, which means who actually cares about security? Does the organization care about security right now or don't they? And if they don't, how do you, oh, here it is again. How do you influence the organization to get back to where you can save it from itself? Oh, darn it. We're back to influence because that's what we have to drive. So let's talk about some of the assumptions, right? What are some of the assumptions that I'm looking at here? So one, you're not going into one of the top banks in the country as a CISO first time. We're not at that top tier where if you look at those CISOs, they've been a CISO 10 times already, maybe. So if that's the case, what are we looking at? We're probably looking at a manufacturing company, maybe a small tech startup that just got Series B funding somewhere in there. With manufacturing and like the design, kind of the import logistics side of the house of building the widgets, you're probably looking at a company with $1 to $2 billion of revenue, maybe three-ish, before they can actually afford to have somebody in a CISO role, whether it's de facto or de jure. We'll come back to that. Okay, cool. Maybe they've got 1 to 2 people, that are running some security operations or engineers. Maybe they went out and spent $150,000 on another organization to come in and give them a cyber assessment. What the shit does that mean? Because I can tell you that with all of the partners that I work with, a cyber assessment means something to one person, and out of that entire cornucopia of vendors, it means something different to every single one of them. So, did they actually get what they need? Probably not. I was mentoring a new CISO yesterday. What's the day? Day before, Wednesday. And he asked me, Stefan, this exact same thing happened, and they spent about $40,000 on some policies and procedures, which is great. I'm glad that his company did that. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't give him a glide path or roadmap. They didn't have give him anything tangible. They didn't say you should maybe switch this. Maybe you, with your outline, you use Wazoo and Security Young, and they didn't do anything. So after this whole payment of services, they had a nice binder that they put on a shelf. What does that do? Cool, I've got a binder. Oh, I don't need a binder. What I need is results. I need you to move the needle. So congratulations, you just got this job offer. Holy crap. Boom. Stoked. I'm stoked for you because I want you to win. You got a job offer and it says CISO. You're starting in what? Probably a month? Great. If you're starting in about a month, what are the things that you're going to do between now and day one? What are those things? Well, so as we kind of look at those things, if they happen to be a public company, and I know a lot of public companies that don't have a CISO, believe it or not. I know a lot of them, and that is frustrating. That's fine. You'd expect them to. Usually it's a second hat. So before you get there, you better go read their 10K at the SEC filing, go to the Edgar database, read their 10K, understand what they're saying that their risks are. Okay, great. Have they actually met Sarbanes-Oxley? Man, there's a lot of questions. So when I talk with a lot of people transitioning into this role, one of the things that I talk about specifically is that your new weapon system probably isn't a SIM. It probably isn't many of the technical controls, IDPRR. This is your new weapon system. This thing, you put the numbers in it, you talk to people. Wait a minute, if that's the case, we already know how to do that as veterans. We're really good at putting things on speed dial and making call trees and making sure communication is flat because we have a primary contingency, an emergency, and or primary alternate contingency and emergency. We already have those. We know how that works. Turns out that's going to be one of your stupid differentiators. So who do you need to put on speed dial? Who do you need to put on speed dial? We'll circle back to that. it might not be who you think. So I know a couple other speakers have talked about this, and I'm sure other people will. It sucks to self promote, right? We spent how many years learning to say, it's not me, it's my team. I'm successful when my team is successful. No, sir. No, ma'am. It wasn't me. It was my team. They're the reasons that this was successful, that we met mission. That's why. It's different now. You have to celebrate your wins. So start getting used to this now. Start getting used to it and still give credit where credit is due. Damn sure that you're going to do that. But also, that self promotion is now instead of my team, it's us. So be there, be honest, be humble. And be humble also means you don't know the role yet. You probably don't know it unless you've come out of the VCISO scene, in which case you probably have a good idea, which is where I sit the vast majority of the time when I'm not doing brokering. Um, you probably don't quite really fully get it and to know the company. So that means the changes that you implement in your first 90 days should be small because you don't want to rock the boat. Because remember, the C stands for change. And if you change too much, are you changing the culture of the organization, the fibers of what the organization is? Sometimes you might need to if you're in an incident response. It's one of our assumptions I forgot to mention is that you're not in an incident response phase as you come in. That's what we're thinking about right now. You might be quickly. So, is what you're planning on doing going to cause people to leave? Okay, organizational change. Funny, we're good at that too, aren't we? Darn right we are. So as you come in, you got to remember that they brought you here to solve a problem, right? During your onboarding, you probably talked to some of the other C-suite, or at least I hope you did, maybe a board member or two. And they all said, "We want you to do this. We want you to secure the company. We want to avoid hacks." Great. Is that actually what they brought you here to hear? Because if you do what they tell you to, did you solve the problem? Are you able to use that to drive new revenue for the company? So, going back earlier, hey, we spent $150,000 on this organization to come in and build our policies and procedures. I just finished a phase one of a big project with the client last week, executive out brief, and effectively what I did was they that exact thing happened. $150,000. They brought me in to do a second opinion. Read through the report. They did a pretty darn good job. They did a pretty darn good job. They missed a couple things. That's fine. They didn't ask enough questions. They only have so much time to do it. I get it. But talking to the company, what they didn't actually change anything. And if they'd asked the right questions, they would have gotten to where I got very quickly, which was you need to split up your company. And last week, this particular client eh, agreed and committed to splitting apart their company to reduce risk for compliance reasons, for entering a new market, all sorts of stuff. Because we asked the right questions, which is awesome. So how do you get there? How do you get there when you may or may not have de facto power or de jure power? Going back to that responsibility thing and accountability. If you're responsible and accountable, you have de jure power. If you don't own the systems that you're trying to protect, that means you have to exert de facto power. De jure means by the law. Someone signed off that you own this. De facto, oh, well, he's the de facto commander, the XO. Okay. Or the first sergeant. Okay. Still have plenty of power, but they don't necessarily have written power. So, how do you do that? And again, it's through influence. So, why are we looking at how you win in the first 90 days, right? Why is it 90 days? Well, 90 days is 720 hours. Great. Here's the thing about that. When most companies bring in a vCISO, it's usually about a year long engagement, usually. And that engagement usually covers all the things that you need to do in your first 90 days. So there you go. Also, your 90 days is a quarter. So you've got a quarter usually before you have to start driving new revenue or decrease cost. And if you're going to do that, that's a quarter. Cool. So now we're already starting to align with business. And oh, by the way, it's one of the standards um, of 90 days. In fact, it's so much important that it's a 30, 60, 90 plan. It's very common. And if you haven't read it yet, the first 90 days. Oh, look, it's an important book. Read it, run through it. A lot of it's going to apply to what it is that we do. That should be your North Star, your guiding light. Cool. So if I'm going to start my 90-day plan, how do I do that? Well, the first thing I do is what is winning at 90 days? And that's a conversation we have to have with the organization. What does it truly mean to win at 90 days? Because if we can't agree on that, then again, what the heck am I going to do here? So if we know what winning is, and one of the ways that I personally define winning at 90 days is I have transitioned from being pulled by the company to pulling the company. One of my 60-day goals, we've transitioned from the words you and me to us. You can auditorily hear that. Okay, cool. Great. So if we're going to transition from being pulled by the company to pulling the company, that means a whole lot of different things. And we need to break that up into three different areas: people, process, and technology. People, process, and technology. So what does your day one look like? You show up on day one. We've talked about what you need to do before you get there. Start building out that Rolodex. You can. Most of your day one is probably going to be filled with organizational stuff. You're going to get there and you're like, I'm ready to go, right? Day one, pack your ruck, you're going to the field. Probably not now, unless you're under an IR. Day one, probably going to be 6 hours of HR signatures and stuff that they didn't get through, of what equivalent is the sharp pan. Da, 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 da. And then you got to think, okay, well, great. But if I'm here to solve that problem and I'm doing this, where's the urgency? Okay. So here's what you do: you advocate on day one for 2 hours to start learning about your job. 2 hours. That's it. That's all you get on day one. There's a couple things you need to know. What are the things that you have to know on day one that the organization might not try to drive you to know? The first one, you need to know the tech stack. Didn't we say people, process, product? Yeah. Or technology? Yeah, we did. But you need the context around the tech stack. And so here's what I recommend: 15-minute overview from one of your architects or engineers. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. Yeah, you have 15 minutes. That drives them to actually be able to explain their network. So you're already building them in their ability to communicate to the things that you need to know. Remember, this is day one. You will have plenty of time to get into it. You'll have plenty of time to jump into network segmentation, to understand your Kubernetes clusters. You'll have time. Or in 15 minutes are the exact things you need to know: development, IT, corporate, OT. Boom. Now you can let your subconscious think about those. Let those turn around as you're sitting there in some probably annoying brief about benefits that you're only partially paying attention to because maybe or maybe not we've figured out benefits finally since we've been out, that thing. You'll still take notes, but you're going to be able to think about it. Who are the vendors that your company is paying for? And what are their phone numbers? Because you have to your Rolodex. When you have an escalation, what if you're in that call about benefits and ring ring, hey, we're under DDoS. Uh uh who's our incident response? Oh, legal has that contact information. Oh, the CFO has that contact information. We don't actually have one. Who do we? No. I will argue that the most important phone number that you have on day one or before that is the at least one phone number for your incident response team. And we all know that that's only P, primary. Three numbers for incident response. Probably the actual incident responder, maybe a forensicator, and then at least one escalation. So a team leader, or maybe if it's a small IR team, the owner of the company, at least 3 ways to communicate with them on your phone on speed dial. The other one, CEO, that's an important one. The other ones, if you have a team, your team members right there, that's probably all you need for day 1. Those are the important numbers because if there is something that happens, if we turn into an incident response, break glass in case of emergency, who do you need to tell? "Hey, ma'am, um, yep, it's my first day. Thank you, thank you. I am glad to be here. There's an issue right now. Um, yeah, yeah, finance is under ransomware. Yeah, I want to let you know that we're working on it. Okay, I will keep you posted gladly. I need forensicators over here now. Thank you. Yep. Um, you're gonna talk to this point of contact. They're gonna take you care. Their phone number is XYZ. Boom. You've already provided an incredible amount of value just by having the Rolodex built in. Now, here's the other thing is because remember, we're going to go back to people. Is day one, you should be spending probably about a half an hour figuring out the contact information of the other people in the organization that you need to schedule time with. Coffee, maybe. Figure it out. Definitely legal, finance, HR, anybody probably, depending on the organization, an SVP level, director level, C suite. Um, you'll have a good idea, and it needs to bridge both sides of the house, right? You don't have to meet with them right now. It can be part of your 30-day plan or halfway into your 60-day plan. That's fine. But it needs to be scheduled, and you schedule that now before they start getting booked up. And as they move around and schedule and reschedule, you'll start to get a feel for who your true allies are, and that's fine because who's prioritizing you and who's not. Great. Oh, gee, that sounds a lot like what we used to do too, right? And the last thing is, when is budget season? When do I owe my budget to the organization? Are we on calendar year fiscal year, which means August? I need to have numbers, and if it's halfway through August right now, am I going to miss the next fiscal year budget if I wait to figure this out in 45 days? Yeah, we got to know that right now. We also have to know: are there any vendors that are up for renewal in the next 30 days, or that we need to give notice for? Because that's a quick win. We'll get to that one. 30 days. So what are your 30 days there for? Your 30 days are to have an assessment and understand what the organization is like. Where are, some of our gaps organizationally with our people, technically? We've got gaps. We've got to figure that all out, right? We're basically doing our inventory. And as we go through and do our inventory, we start looking at things like coverage, et cetera. Okay, cool. So that's I know what the organization is kind of doing, but what are the organizational goals? What is the business actually doing? Are we launching our product in a new country? Are we moving to EMEA? Are we launching a new, say, privacy product? Do we have a ton of PII that we're about to start offering in a different way, which might escalate us and totally cause an totally new reporting chain? When you start overlaying that on your timeline, things start to shift around. You start to have more clarity, which is amazing. It's really amazing. And in the 30 days, we've started to really develop our relationships with people across the organization, across the C-suite. So if we have the traditional structure of CISOs under the CIO, who's a peer of the CTO and DevOps, and maybe they've got an AppSec engineer over there, that means we have to have that de facto relationship cross boundary because we're peers and I can't make them do anything without going to my boss, who's going to then go talk to their boss and then come back down. So we're building those relationships as required. I don't recommend that for an organizational structure, by the way. Not my style. We're also policies, procedures, and our program. Those are in review right now. You've read them. Maybe you've even written a couple more, which we'll get back to that. I promise. But you've read Pendom, you've got them off. And the reason I said we had to talk to HR earlier is because some of our policies that we're going to recommend at the programmatic level for security and some of the procedures that are in there need HR approval because we're talking HR things because people process product. And when we start looking at the developer team, oh, Okay, now we've got to do that. And then how we do our code, and then what do we do for incident response, and who's the notification? And then we have to know our marketing team because we have was it step 5, invoke emergency communications plan as part of an incident response. Cool. We've got some of that stuff. We're working it. It's in review. We've taken a first look. We've passed it off, and it's coming back to us. Also, do we need to do any company-wide training? We don't need to do it in the first 90 days, probably, but make sure that it's actually scheduled. So most companies do that Q1. Have your team go look at your calendar. Has your team right now scheduled your security training for Q1? We can make it an annual thing. And if it's scheduled, have you built the deck yet to get it over to the other, like to get your ops team, to get your HR team to make sure you're not saying anything you can't say? Hey, that can be annoying if you say something you're not supposed to say. Whoops. No, 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 we don't monitor your stuff. Well, we kind of do monitor some stuff some places. Ah, shoot, there's that stupid M word that we're going to fight about so much. Start talking about that now. Because it gets back to influence, because we have to get those commitments from people outside of our organization to get to yes, so we can do the things that we need to do. So that way, when again springtime hits and all those stupid compliance questionnaires come in January, February, March, and April, we can actually respond to them truthfully, which we should be doing anyway, right? But we can show that we're moving the needle and we're progressive. And I've seen clients lose out on new clients for themselves, their own new people that give them money because they don't have the policies, procedures, and training in place for their own environment. I've seen that. And clients out there in the world, so buyers out there in the world are starting to actually be smart because their insurance companies are requiring them to be smart about this. It's a circle. It's a circle. And you can use that knowledge as influence. So again, we go back to again de facto to de jure power, right? So who are the mavens, the champions, and the board members that need to understand this? Because you can leverage someone else's de jure power to accomplish your goals, right? A maven is somebody that's incredibly connected. If we're doing like the human wire diagram of who's connected to whom in a company, the maven has probably the most spokes on their hub. You need to know them because they have de facto power. You need to know them. So you need to understand what that looks like. The champions across the organization. I guarantee there will be people in your organization that are going to come to you soon and they'll say, "Hey, I really want to know security. Can we know more?" And you better know where to point them. Okay, great. Well, what do you want to do? Do that coaching session with them, that mentorship session with them. And there's tons of mentors out there. I know I've published a bunch of stuff on this. Jackson, Dr. Ruger, and John Helmus, and so many other people put so much great content out about that. You don't necessarily have to know it yourself, and you can point them in the right direction, right? Use my article, "How to Learn Cyber in 48 Hours." Great, you can do it. Start with a mindset, and then you can coach technical after that. So you can help develop those champions to help drive again the things that you need to do. And are there any board members that you need to talk to? One of the most interesting ways that, outside of ransomware, DDoS, that companies get new dollars for security program is because a new board member joined, and that board member has lived through a breach somewhere else. They'll ask questions. One of our clients, they work in a highly regulated industry that's regulated per state, and they've got a national presence. Um, New board member comes on and goes, "Hey, what's our percentage that we're spending overall on IT out of our whole revenue model?" Great. And of that, what is the percentage that's spent on security? Make it more and get it done in next time we talk in 90 days. Yay! Now we get to do the things that we need to do. We've known we need to do these. We can actually fill the gaps. We're not going to go do crazy things with it. We already have a roadmap. We know what we need to do. So let's do that. And as we do that, how do we build our external team? Right? How do we build our external team? We only have so many people. We can't do all of this. Maybe we need to evaluate a new endpoint solution or say, "Hey, across the market, what out there is going to be good?" That's a great time to go out and leverage a broker or a VAR or professional services, which sometimes operate on retainers. And each of those are different and they each have their best thing that they bring to the table. Broker, that's where I happen to sit most of the time. Uh, Effectively, what we do is We don't do any reselling. So we're a little bit different than a VAR. That what we do is, oh, hey, you need endpoint solution. We'll keep it easy. Endpoint solution. Great. There's 400 on the market. There's 40 that are probably good for you. And there's 4 that actually are going the same direction you are organizationally, so that'll be a good fit for more than a year. And then of those 4, 2 of them happen to be in the portfolio that we can make introductions to and help you work through it. Great. At the same time, you probably have a relationship with a VAR. I've got tons of relationships with VARs. Love them. They're awesome. What they do is they're buying some of those solutions at bulk and then reselling them to you, usually with additional services built onto it. So those are great ways to expand your team without actually hiring new people. And the pro services side, I don't know of any, unless you're maybe in a couple of financial industries, I don't know of anybody that's probably listening to this that says, oh, we have enough people to do our job. Probably not. And then during that first 30 days, take those new partners, those new like pro services firms that you're looking at, the new brokers, the VARs, whatever those new partners are, start working their agreements through legal now. Don't wait. Do it now. And do it now because if you need them in 45 days before your 90 days is up, it might take that long for legal to get back and bash each other with red pens until they get to yes. If you wait longer and you're in a scenario where maybe a board member comes in and says, hey, go spend more money. That'd be a great scenario. More likely it's an incident response, right? Having those relationships in place now means that when it comes down to it and you do need it, you have the bell and all you have to do is ring it. Start it now, start it early. And this is just for fun, right? You're in the new organization, probably one of the first things that's gonna happen, in the first week. So, obviously, you're gonna get that spam, the phishing attack that because you updated LinkedIn, that comes in and says, Stefan@company.com. This is their CEO. I'm at a conference right now, and I really need you to send some gift cards. You're gonna get those, so expect that, and include that in your training, by the way. Include it in your new employee onboarding, include it in your annual, like, we know those things. But also, here's the funny part of it, is within your first week, you'll probably have 3 people come up to you and say, "Hey, I got this email. Is this spam?" And you don't make fun of them. You bring them in, and you take a look at it, and you build that relationship because 'cause they're coming to you. Maybe they're testing you. They're probably there because they truly want to be an ally. They truly want to understand, are they doing the right thing? Build the relationship. And then another time, and then another thing is somebody will probably come in, maybe it's the same person. "Yeah, this one time I know somebody that got hacked." Um, cool, great. Make the relationship, have the conversation, do it. I know people that don't, and oh my gosh, just do it. Renewals. You're paying for a service. We talked about this before, right? Start working on them because renewals is a great way. Say you're overspending on something, or you're spending money on 2 tools that do 80% of the same thing. You can reduce one, maybe you don't need that coverage anymore, the extra. If you can start looking at your renewals and you're able to knock off some of that info now, that cost, great, it's an easy win. Another thing here is, do you have signature authority? Many states will define who can have signature authority to enter in new agreements. If you are in a state that allows you to do that and the organization says you should, start working through it now because sometimes that can take up to 45 days. So if it's a renewal and you can do it and you've got latitude and your CFO relationship says it's good, start working through it. And oh, by the way, in your first 30 days, we're putting a lot of stuff on your plate right now, right? Get your insurance, take a look at your insurance and understand, do we have enough and do we need to make it more? 60 days. Hey, look, we're almost to 90 days. Great. So at 60 days, you have a good idea of the direction that the organization is going. You have a good idea of where you and your team need to go, right? And because we know what the business is doing, that gives us motivation for us and our team. Pass through motivation, phenomenal. And we're stable as we work to do that. We're starting to also understand and be able to give purpose on the things that we're doing. Wait a minute, purpose, direction, and motivation, the 3 legs of the tripod that is leadership. Now we're getting back to many of the things that we're good at. So those hundreds of hours that we've been to on leadership development, game on. We're starting to rise above. We can see the forest through the trees. 60 days again. We did that gap analysis. Can we close out any of those renewals and do any cost savings? What is the budget that we need to do? Again, if we're close to, getting it at Q4, we probably have a good budget predictor. So we've gone from doing our research, closing off anything that we can maybe get done immediately, and then we've got to go ask for more for other things most likely. So getting that in the budget now, great. Start having those conversations. And then have you worked outside over in the CTO channel of working with the software development lifecycle team to secure it. So an SSDLC. Remember, this is probably where you have de facto power, not de jure power. And the way that you sell that is not with security. You sell it from a quality perspective because the CTO understands quality. And then if the CTO understands quality, what you are doing with security is you're reducing rework. And remember, rework costs an extra about 10x. So if you can stop it before it gets into prod, while you're still in the dev or test environments before it gets to prod, you're looking at being able to save 90% of work on the backside. That's a quality solution, right? Five nines, Six Sigma, PMP. That's quality program. And that's how you can save money. So now, if you can save money and you can keep, 50 agile or 25 agile cycles a year instead of knocking off 3 to 4 of those for rework, you are directly driving new revenue for the company and reducing costs at the same time. Well done. You got it. Cool. So now, IDPRR, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Your organizational identify is complete. Congratulations. Now we have to drive our plan. That's where we get into 90 days. So again, what is success at 90 days? You've talked about that. And have we really understand and agreed upon what success is? If you have, now you reevaluate and maybe you need to redefine what success is. Totally fine. Because you've identified, detected, protected, responded, and recovered the organization most likely by this point. Small outage here or there, maybe an itty bitty DDoS, maybe some ransomware, maybe CFO got phished. Oh, there goes $10,000. Whoa. Okay, fine. But we understand that. We've accepted it. We've communicated that, and we're working to build our plan in. And that plan is our roadmap. Now we can take all the business objectives at the top. We can take all the business objectives at the top of our roadmap. Timeline, 36 months. If you can get to 48, more power to you. Boom, launching in Europe. Boom, launching in federal space. Boom, new PII requirements. Boom, whatever, whatever, whatever. And then from there, you work backwards. Oh man, this sounds like mission planning. Yeah, yeah. This is like E7, 0102 warrant stuff, right? And if you're not at that level, you probably are getting close to it before you got out. And if you're like a 5-time E1, that's a different conversation. I'd love to know why. Please, I will buy 2 beers to learn that story. But that roadmap, we overlay business objectives, we overlay risk requirements, compliance. We overlay all of that together. And underneath, we do people. When do you think you'll be able to get more people added to the team? Is it pro services? Are you hiring fully? Are you going to lose people? You start overlaying that all together, and then you start backwards planning, and then it's process, and then it's technology. And I forgot to write it in here, but there's some really great resources. Carlota Sage has a phenomenal repo on her GitHub called "Show Me the Money." Jake, Tom, remind me to put that out on the link. But it is a great one. It's actually one of the ones I recommend for junior CISOs because it is so good. And it talks about how you can really, literally show the cost savings through implementing a new security. Like SSO, if I can save 3 minutes per person per day, I can literally go through and say that's why we should pay for this new SSO option, right? Because I can show you it might cost this much money, but we're saving this much man woman hours across the organization. Wow, that's a no-brainer because influence goes back to revenue. And then if nothing else, at 90 days, you must have your tabletop scheduled. We rehearse in the military. Getting to that and getting that socialized in the civilian side is going to be a challenge. So do it. Get it scheduled, probably for like your third quarter here, somewhere 9 months to 12 months ish, because you got to socialize that and get buy-in, right? And it's going to take that long. Massively awesome. And at this point, new brokers and VARs are probably through legal, which is amazing. That means when you need to ring the bell, you can ring the bell. Great. Good job. So let's talk about some quick wins. What are some quick wins? And this is silly, right? Picking a risk framework. I wish I could say that picking a risk framework wasn't a quick win, but the truth is I run across a lot of organizations where I come in and they're still arguing about whether to do NIST CSF or 853 or ISO or blah, right? Or some one of the 15,000 German automobile manufacturer frameworks. Honestly, just coming in and picking one and then getting ready to execute it is is pretty cool. And that part, again, vision, direction, purpose, and motivation. Pick one, maybe two, if you cross continent, whatever. Um, that gives an incredible amount of direction. And once you've got that locked in, you can feel the change. You can feel the change in the organization. And then at this point, you should have a Rolodex of every one of your vendors, every one of your partners, and their escalation points for at least 5 levels, maybe four. But we're talking five. So tier one help desk, cool. Tier two help desk, cool. That doesn't work. Who are like their solutions architects, their sales architects, their sales engineers? Who's your salesperson themselves? Who's that person's boss? Like all and that's going to be like a couple 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper that you have taped to your darn wall. So that way, if something happens, you can fix it because this is right here. This thing right here is your weapon system. That is how you work through this and expand your influence. And then probably getting ready for that IR tabletop. Again, it's so important I'm putting in there twice. And you're probably not going to get money for new people, right? So getting the dollar amount ready to understand some pro services on top of it. Maybe it's one person a day a week. Maybe it's two people a day a month. Where is that? How can we align that? What can we offload? Now let's talk about pitfalls because we talked about some quick wins. What are the pitfalls? Insurance companies, sometimes they're not paying out right now because you might have the policy, right? You might have the policy, but it's written on the back of a Post-it note. And that means if there is an incident, one of the things they might ask is, did you follow your incident response plan? Did you work through it? Did you contact, your legal counsel? Did you assemble your incident response team? Did you determine your insurance coverage? Did you establish a command center? Did you invoke the emergency communications plan and set up a recurring meeting status? If you had that written down, did you do it? And sometimes they're not paying unless you actually follow your plan. And you can do it. Just print off another copy of your plan and check the box and make notes on it as you go through. That's what I would do. Is that going to be enough? Is that going to be enough of a burden of proof to show that you were good and get your dollars? Maybe, probably, but you had one and you did stuff with it. Boom. If you need to call an audible, fine, call the audible. Um, doing what you're told. Oh. Pitfalls, doing what you're told. Oh, Stefan, are you sure that's a pitfall? Let me qualify this one. If you're told to do something, like remember why they brought you here. They brought you here for a reason. If you're doing that and you've never raised yourself above the fray to look around and say, okay, what's going on? How do we do this? Then the thing they brought you in for might be wrong. And if you do what they brought you in to do, if it is wrong, then you failed because you never dug through to the root cause analysis at the organizational level to figure out, confirm or deny that what you're doing is the right thing to do. It's on here because I see it all the time. Now, here's the deal. You can do it. You can absolutely do this. And the imposter in you is going to disagree. That's fine. Tell them to go away. Tell the internal dialogue to go away because you can do this. You've been through worse, right? When shit hits the fan and you're sitting there going, everybody else around you is melting, and you just go, "Yeah, we gotta do that. Okay, everybody, let's breathe." Comments, questions, concerns on that route? No? Everybody head nod to agree? Let's go. That calm that you bring, the ability to breathe, to assess the situation, identify a plan, delegate and execute. Easy. You will start to shine, and it can be kind of fun. So congrats. You made it through your first 90 days. Amazing. I'm super stoked for you. Here's the question. What's next? Is it to be a CISO again? Is it to switch over to CIO to be a CTO? After your first 90 days, you're gonna start to realize that CISO, this thing that you've put on the pedestal for so long, now that you're here, might not actually be the thing. It might not be the end state. It might just be the next stair step as you go to the next level. So just keep that in mind. All right, y'all. I think we're just coming up on time now, so you can AMA. Ask me anything. Put it in chat if you want. I've got a bunch of stuff we can talk about. I'm on pace to mentor about 300 people this year. So let me know. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on YouTube. On Twitter, I'm Diopac. And I want this community to succeed. I want you to go out and crush it. I want you to come back, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, smiling because you friggin' crushed it. That's what I want. I want you to win. I know you can. And let's go help out the community, pay it forward. Happy day. I'll put my feet up and wait for a couple questions. Maybe drink a little bit because I kind of forgot to eat lunch, but I had jelly beans. Dustin Warren asks, Stefan off topic, what's the longest run you've ever completed? That would be 26.6 something miles. It was a hill marathon. It's the first marathon I ever ran. DuPont Trails out in Washington, so just next to Fort Lewis. A ton of elevation change, a stupid amount of elevation change. And I got to tell you, it's supposed to be 26.2. That last whatever was the hardest part because I'm looking down at my watch going, I'm done. Where's the friggin' finish line? And we were actually starting COVID shutdown at that point. It's one of the last official races that I've run in person. We're starting to come on board again, but yeah, yeah, that was and the other part about that, I've been a runner pretty much my whole life. Love doing it. I'm best at short distances, so a marathon was hard. That was my first marathon, and ever, and it was also the longest distance that I'd ever run. Of course, not just in my life, but more importantly, and I think at the part that I like to try to bring as an inspiration and why I do part of this is because it's the furthest I ran after being paralyzed and learning to walk again. So yeah. Okay, another question on how to get into security. Oh, here we go. Jax, y'all need to check out the podcast interview coming up in 3 weeks on hackers and hacks and share this amazing journey. Yeah, Jax, you are. I love what you're doing with Outpost Gray. By the way, I love the way that you're helping build the community. And yeah, go check out my time with Jax on our podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. What was the GitHub link? Oh yeah, Zalia, thank you for reminding me. Let's see if I've got that up on here. Make sure I'm in the right browser here. GitHub, show me. Oh, look, I've already got it right there. It's like I've been there recently. Carlota is just awesome. If y'all ever get a chance to meet her, please do. Um, she's a powerhouse in the community, and you'll see that by going through her GitHub. Um, her talk at B-Sides Augusta just a couple weeks ago was awesome, and the way that she's progressed that GitHub specifically, she goes down and breaks a bunch of the files out and why they're important. So if you want to know why and how to use the document, go look at that. Just YouTube, uh, YouTuber. A day in the life of a CISO. So it depends on if you're full time or doing vCISO work. A little bit different. It's also a little bit different in the industry that you're in. So the banking industry is very different than manufacturing. Is different than a sales organization. Is different than a biotech startup. Is different than uh, fruit distribution. Like every one of those is a little bit different. What I can say is you're going to be spending more time away from tech than you probably initially thought about, and that may be a great way for you to move through your career. Maybe not. Um, I know a lot of people as they move away for keyboard very much miss it, but again, a lot of it hasn't changed. So stay on it. You know, keep your GitHub a little bit green. Commit some code every now and then. Uh, Most of it is applying influence. So it's getting a good understanding of where your posture is right now, things that are happening, and then translating that to other people. So if you're the CISO for, say, a cyber company, it's going to be incredibly different. And the CISO for a cyber company is often very much more client facing. You're out trying to help drive sales. So that's very different than like a small, say, credit union where you're trying to identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and build those plans out and be able to look at the fray, understand that you elevate yourself above the fray. Um, Josh Langus asks, "Do I have any books in the work?" Yes, yes, I do. I am trying to find a publisher that wants more of the infantry vernacular in it. Um, that one particularly is going to be on cyber sales. So I think that'll be a whole lot of fun. There's not a lot of books out there on it right now, and it's one of the things that I turns out I'm really good at. So I want to make sure that we can help the community and grow the community. And I will try, depending on publisher, I will attempt to price it as low as possible because it's about the community. It's not about me. Zalia asks, "What's the next step for me?" Well, like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more info. Check out my YouTube. Check out my LinkedIn. We'll uh, that's kind of close hold for right now, but yeah, the golden handcuffs. 'Cause remember, I sold my company, so the golden handcuffs are pretty tight. Uh, but if I didn't have a plan, I wouldn't be very much of an infantryman, would I? Thank you, Jax. Yep, there's she just posted in the YouTube there. So, Jake, I think we've got like 2 more minutes. Is it good if I go till the hour, or do I need to hop now? I'm gonna keep going until you shut me off, by the way. Cool. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Um, One of the common questions that I get all the time is how to get into cybersecurity. Like, what's the best route, right? So, in that the hundreds of people I've mentored, it's been across the entire spectrum. It's been from CEOs to chief revenue officers down to high school students and junior hires that want to start going into this route. And what the industry will mostly tell you is you need to start with red team hacking. And I disagree with that because that route generally focuses on technical. And there are so many different realms to get into cybersecurity that just saying a technical route is the way to go kind of it diminishes what we do. And since it diminishes what we do, I like to make sure that we understand the non-technical route as well. So I talked to a gentleman, and I had these conversations all the time. I talked to a gentleman that said he wanted to be an analyst. I said, okay, great. Why do you want to be an analyst? Because I really like cybersecurity, but I'm kind of late in my career. I did something else for 20 years, and it's not relevant. And I'm really struggling with a pay cut if I switch over to be an analyst. Okay, what did you do before this? Well, it's not relevant. I'll be the judge of that. Dang it! Tell me what you did. Well, I was in the family business, and we were in orthodontics, and I ran sales for 20 years for the family business. You have 20 years of a sales experience. You should be selling cybersecurity. Get just enough domain knowledge that you should go sell. Oh, I can do that. Yeah, man, it's a route. It's definitely a route. I talked to a lady that, was coming she spent 20 years, home with the kids, and I said, "What did you do before that?" She goes, "Oh, well, I was a C programmer." "Oh, you were? It hasn't changed. You still put a semicolon at the end of the line, right? It hasn't changed, you can still get there." And Dallas is talking about, in chat here, "For the non-technical, I feel like the GRC auditing is a good route because you get to pick up the technical vocabulary and learn the tech as you go." Yeah, so this morning, I was talking to a gentleman in the UK. He's the chief of police, and he wants to get into cybersecurity, and that's exactly what I told him, is to focus on auditing. Specifically for him in Europe, ISO 27001, and then, I give him a couple of the book lists, because he definitely understands the threat, right? because he understands people. And if you understand threat and you understand people, auditing is easy because as a chief of police, you run audits. You probably were the person doing the auditing prior to that. You know you know the route to go, and then is probably gonna end up in business development. All right, y'all. We're at basically a minute over, so connect with me, connect with the other people that were in chat. Please go watch the other speakers. I do this because I want the community to succeed, and you're just like Jax and Jake, and John earlier, and Jeff. A lot of J's today. Holy cow! Um, there's people here to help you succeed, and we want to see you succeed. You can do this. You do belong here, and we're gonna pull each other up by our own bootstraps. We're gonna do it together, and when you go this route, uh, you're gonna find it very, very, very fulfilling. And oh, by the way, if you go this route, your next step is going back to being an individual contributor because it wasn't the perfect fit. Good, you know that. Go do what you're best at. I love you guys. Happy day.